Hello! This is Mr. Axebane, and I'm making a video game. This is devlog number 1 for Project RustStorm. Project RustStorm is a solo game dev project that I started about 3 months ago. I've actually already made quite a bit of progress, and I'm really excited about it. That's why I'm doing this devlog. This devlog is going to be a little bit different than most of the devlogs you see on YouTube because I don't have time to put production value into this with animations and transitions and fancy editing and all that stuff. I gotta spend the time on developing the game, so the devlogs are going to be kind of unpolished, more of a off the cuff, almost like a live stream in a way. For this devlog, I'm going to talk about the type of game I'm making, the engine I'm using, and my game dev process. So far the game already has 5 difficulty levels: easy, normal, hard, epic, and hell. For this playtest, I'll probably play in normal mode. The difficulties already affect a lot of different things in the game: your maximum health, the amount of damage you deal to enemies, how quickly radiation accumulates, how much damage you take from radiation if you accumulate too much, and probably at least one other thing that I don't remember. Oh, the starting alert level is also affected by it. So on the lower difficulty levels, it takes a little bit longer before you're fighting larger groups of enemies. There's 8 classes in the game so far: Adventurer, Decker, Guardian, Gunner, Hunter, Reaver, Vanguard, and Wanderer. In this playtest, I'm probably going to play a Decker. That's usually what I do when I playtest. In fact, I need to do more playtesting of the other classes, but I like doing the Decker because they're fast and they got the best hacking skill. You can select your primary skill. This basically just adds 2 points to whatever of these skills you choose, and it can be any of them for any class, so that you can create unique, combinations, stuff that's a little bit different, maybe like a Decker who has actually got a lot of brawn or armor, for instance. I could take hacking, which would give me a lot of hacking ability, but I think I'm actually going to take luck. All of these skills already affect a lot of things in the game. Luck affects how likely you are to find loot by a little bit. It increases the chance you get the better loot a little bit. It gives you more variety in shop items generally. And the reason I want to take it is because it helps hacking a little bit. And if you do a data hack and you succeed, luck will help you to get more data. You can also select your starting item: pocket alert meter, basic cyber deck, bleakstone map book, power wrench, RustStorm mask, blank floppy disks, large ammo bags, and canned spinach. I wanted to have at least one option that was kind of silly for those kind of silly roleplay, moments when you want to play like a Decker. It's like, oh, I've got a cyber deck, or I don't have a cyber deck, but I eat a lot of spinach. Like, I don't know, it's just a weird character idea. Spinach actually exists in the game. All these items do, and it increases your maximum health by a little bit. I'm going to start with the basic cyber deck so that I don't have to save up and buy one before I can start doing the hacking. And you can save up and buy any of the other items that are on there, so if you don't choose an item there, you'll still be able to acquire it. You just have to buy it. Here's the backstory that I've got so far. It's fairly good, I think. I don't know. I guess I'm not the judge of that. Other people will judge that. It may change. Anything that's shown here is subject to change. It should be obvious, but I might completely rewrite this. I'm not going to sit and read it right now. If you want to, slow the video down or pause the video and read it yourself, feel free. It's not exactly your typical post-apocalyptic storyline. But I'm proud of it. I think it'll be decent. The game has a pretty strong visual style, I feel like. I've done most of the textures and sprite work, but some of these textures, like these walls here, and actually that wall section there, a lot of these textures are based on the amazing texture pack called Retro Texture Pack by Little Martian that you can find on itch.io. This player starts out in this little room. This is like your home. You can come back here, you know, whenever you want, and you can sleep in the bed, which will reduce your radiation, heal you a little bit, and save your game. There's a little dispenser here that's broken and needs serious work. And you can actually fix this. This is already in the game. If you get a power wrench, you can begin the repair of it. And then if you get the materials, you can continue, and there's certain stages of the repair, and once you do all the stages, it will be fully repaired and then functional, and then you can use it. You can use that dispenser whenever you want. The idea is to have sort of a little bit of, there's going to be more of these dispensers so that the player can kind of slowly upgrade their home if they want to have like working dispensers and stuff. Player starts in a like safe area, like a town. I originally conceived it as like it was outdoors, but in a perpetual twilight or something weird. I don't know. Actually, I'm going to change it to where it's in a large cave, but I haven't added the ceiling to the cave yet, so it's just a blank sky. There's several shops here in the starting area, including this junk shop. Junk shops are basically like miscellaneous item shops. They'll have sort of a mix of items. And what's cool is that it's all semi-random. It's not completely random, and I think these first aid kits are always here. They're not random. But all these other items are semi-random. It's not completely random because I usually limit it to a certain type of item, and it'll pick something within that group. So I can kind of choose what shops, like, these slots are like for pretty much any item. I think these as well, because it's a junk shop, so it has a miscellaneous, you know, combination of stuff. But all these items actually work. There's nothing in the game that doesn't actually work right now. And I'm going to get to that when I talk about my process, because that's a little different than what people usually do. And there's good reason that they don't usually do that, but this is working well for me. So these things, if I try to buy one of these, they'll tell me the price and how many credits I've got. And if I have enough, I can click it again to buy the item. Which I just did there. Actually, I didn't really want to buy that yet. Well, that's not bad. That's not bad. So I bought some blank floppy disks. This game has sort of a retro 80s kind of vibe to it. It contrasts a bit with the retro 50s vibe that you see in a game like Fallout. Oh, there's a free item, but I don't need it, but I'm going to drink it anyway. Premium vodka. That was a random item there. That's why I'm wandering around looking and stuff. Like, sometimes an item can spawn there. It didn't spawn there this time, though. Every time you enter a map, it will regenerate the loot. And I jumped up here because sometimes there's a little item there, and sometimes there's an item there. Anyway, there's lots of places where loot could appear, and there's some places where loot will always appear. But for the most part, it's kind of dynamic. Like it's randomly assigned each time you load a map. Here's a guns and gear shop that has kind of a mix. You can get some of your starting weapons here. You start with this generic fictional assault rifle that I have here, which looks terrible. And I'm aware that it looks terrible. I haven't gotten around to finishing the art for the weapons, so you can see they are very basic with very little shading or highlights or detail, really. That's just because it hasn't been a high priority to do that. And so I haven't felt like going back and improving them yet. But I am definitely going to do that before the game is finished, because they look like crap right now. And I'm well aware of that. Here's a cybernetic upgrade that you can get called the Armored Skull. It basically just improves your armor. So it's actually one of the least interesting cybernetic upgrades that you can find. Sometimes a shop will have a blank spot on the shelf, so they're not always fully stocked. Again, it's to make it, you know, semi-random to increase replayability. I'd like to buy more ammo, but let's see, I have 200. Okay, yeah, I can still do that. I'm gonna go ahead and stock up on a bit of rifle ammo before I go out here and playtest. And you might be wondering why I'm showing a playtest instead of actual development. Well, I don't really have enough hard drive space, and I don't have a good enough computer to be able to record all of my development. And also, I don't think I want to do that. I'm not interested in that, because I think it might distract me, and it would be kind of weird. Feel like somebody's watching me the whole time, even though I can edit it and change it later. But so I'm not going to be recording my actual development process, but because I have so much playable content already, I'm going to show you the actual game. And it's also, it kind of gives me a feel of what I used to do when I used to do live streaming a long time ago. This kind of feels like that to me. It's fun. I can just kind of play and talk. So this is the first outdoor area you come to. The actual map layouts are hand built, like I've built every one of these block by block in the editor. But what types of, what types of enemies, the amount of enemies, what types of loot, and the amount of loot, and a lot of other things will be different every time. But the layout of the maps is going to be the same every time. So it's not a procedurally generated world, it's a handmade world. It's just that I place entities around the map that can spawn items, and they do so, you know, using scripts that I've written to allow for variety, so that every time you go to a region, you don't know exactly what you're going to find. There's one of the enemies, one of the basic robots, and then that little scout type robot. These are breakable, but I don't have a power wrench right now, and you have to have a certain amount of brawn to break the larger items. So I think you need at least 4 brawn to break open one of these cars. You can bash it open, and then you may get lucky and find a piece of loot. And those will be regenerated too when you load the map. They'll be back. It's not so the world's not persistent, but there are some persistent elements, and obviously you keep the items and upgrades that you buy and stuff. Here's one of the types of terminals that you can hack or attempt to hack. I'm also going to grab this ammo. So I've got a basic cyber deck, so it's going to let me start the hack. It's not a hacking minigame. It's more of a skill test. So each time I press E, oh, I succeeded. Each time I press E on this, it's basically rolling a random number and then comparing that number to my current hacking skill, and sometimes my luck skill. Like I think luck helps us at the beginning of a hack and then toward the end if you're doing a data hack. And then as you do that, each time you fail, it adds to the error count, and if you have too many errors, you'll fail the hack. This time though, I made it through without failing too many times on those skill checks that are done in the background or behind the scenes, you know. But I succeeded in enough of them that it unlocked this door, and I'm rewarded with a bit of loot and some floppy disks. Currently there's only 3 types of enemies in the game. That little orb bot or scout bot there, which actually never attacks you or never does damage to you, but what it does is it increases the alert level each time it makes an attack noise. The alert level determines how large the groups of enemies that you fight are, and then this is just a basic bot. There's actually a shop item you can purchase, or you can choose to start with it like I had there at the beginning. The pocket alert meter, if you buy that or start with that, you'll get another meter in the bottom left there. It'll be above that rad meter, and it will tell you what the current alert level is. And while you're outside, the alert level is always slowly going up. There's actually invisible entities placed on the map that you won't see, but they see you, and like roughly every 3/4 of a second, they will increase the alert level a little bit. But they can't see you if you're inside of a building or you're underground. So it's sort of like the robots are tracking you from the sky or something. And if you go inside, if I hang out, well, hang on. There happen to be a couple enemies in there. If I hang out in this building here, I know for a fact there's no invisible entity inside here that will increase the alert level. So it's kind of neat. You can kind of like stick to the underground and stay inside as much as possible if you want to keep the alert level from getting too high. Here's another door hack. Now, to show you, this door is locked. I can't open it. If I can succeed on this hack, I'll be able to open it. Access denied. So I failed too many times there on the skill checks, and so now I'm locked out. I can't interact with it anymore, and the door is still locked. If I come back to this map, I can try it again. Because like I say, it's not really persistent necessarily. It's not really meant to be like a simulation. I just want there to be a lot of variety, a lot of replayability, and a little bit of dynamic events and spawning, so that it's kind of fresh. It's a little bit unexpected what you're going to find. So I said I'd talk about the type of game that I'm making. It's a single player FPS with light RPG elements. and some immersive sim elements, although those weren't really intentional. It's just I wanted to create a lot of potential ways to approach things, but it's not really an immersive sim though, so don't get disappointed if you're like, well, I couldn't talk to anybody and negotiate my way out of anything. Well, no, yeah, it doesn't really have that, but the maps are very open-ended, the world itself is open-ended, you're not directed necessarily to have to go any particular place. There will be some sort of quests or missions, but right now there are none. It's all self-directed. But for instance, like if I can hack this, then I can get to an alternate path. And what's kind of cool is while you're doing these hacks and pressing E to progress through, oh, I failed. Everything else is still going on around you, so you're actually hacking while the enemies are moving around. So if there's enemies nearby, you got to be careful while you're doing it. So that's what type of game that I'm making, and it's going to be PC only. I don't even think the engine that I'm using has the capability to export for consoles. So it'll be a PC only game. It's going to be an indie game, obviously. I'm solo developing it. I don't have a release date yet. I'm hoping I can make this game in about 1 year total. But as most people who've developed games or know anything about game development, especially as a solo developer, that can be quite tricky. So I don't know if I'll make it, but I'm going to try. Also, I'm planning to have a playable demo as soon as possible. I mean, technically I could release one right now, but I think I'm going to wait a little longer before I get a playable demo out there, a public demo. I'm basically doing a closed alpha test amongst a very small group of friends at the moment. But the way I'm designing this, I'm trying to make sure I always have a working build at any given moment, so that I can build demos frequently and update the demo easily. So I want to have the first playable demo out as soon as possible. It'll be still in the alpha stage, but I'm gonna make a free demo out there, even while it's still in alpha, most likely. The game will never have any microtransactions or any season pass bullcrap or any of that stuff. It's just gonna be, you know, a nice little indie game. You can just buy it and have it, and none of that extra monetization stuff. See if I can get in here. I love doing the hack thing, even though it's not really a hacking minigame, and there's really not much. There's no decision to make except whether to continue the hack or not. For some reason, I still really enjoy it, and I hope people have some fun with it. It's kind of silly. It doesn't take itself too seriously, as you can probably see. The whole game in general doesn't take itself too seriously, really. I mean, it's a dark setting, you know, it's post-apocalyptic, but it's kind of a different sort of post-apocalypse. It's not your typical post-apocalypse. I don't even know if I'm going to have raiders or bandits or any of that crap. I'm kind of tired of that. I don't know, I'm just tired of that. It's a more colorful apocalypse. And I'm planning to have lots of vines and overgrowth and stuff, and you see there's plenty of trees and stuff. It's not all gray, brown muck, you know, but there is a lot of rust. I like the look of rust. Like, rusty stuff just looks kind of beautiful to me. I don't know why, but yeah, so there's obviously going to be a lot of rust. Back here is another one of the safe zone type places, the town areas. These will have usually have a variety of shops, maybe some terminals you can hack. There's usually a save point. So this is one of the little towns, like I say. There's a tech shop here. These are probably my favorite type of shops. You can find stuff like cyberdecks, more floppy disks. I'll go ahead and buy those. Oh, a better cyberdeck. This is the Pineapple 2. It gives you +1 hacking, +1 data selling, and -2 alert level. The -2 alert level actually applies anytime you do a hack, so it'll actually lower the alert level when you do a hack. When you fail a hack, that increases the alert level. So you don't actually want to do a lot of hacking if you're not good at it, unless you're looking for a fight. Like if you feel strong enough and you got the equipment and you're like, yeah, I want to face a bunch of robots, then just hack everything and keep failing. I mean, you'll intentionally increase the alert level. There's already like 4 different cyber decks if you count the basic cyber deck. This is these are some weapon upgrades here. There's light armor. This increases your maximum ammo capacity for all weapons. There's another weapon upgrade. There's some basic first aid. There's a save station in there, and then some decorations there. There's a guns shop and a junk shop. It's actually the same shop, but he just put 2 signs up there. And all the shops are run by robots, because the robots rule the world now. That's it's like one of the basic parts of the backstory is that the robots run everything now. So the companies are all robotic. I don't even know what that means, but just robots are in charge, I guess. You know, that's the thing. Here's a rare map book. There's maps for the areas, but they're not like a dynamic map. They don't show you where your location is on the map. It's just like a map like you would have in real life. Like you have to look at it and be like, wait a sec, where am I? It's sort of weird. I have a feeling people are going to hate that. I might have to change it because a lot of people are going to be angry probably. But you have to actually buy the maps. You don't just get them. But the maps also show you cool stuff like where all the terminals are on that map and whatnot. There's an SMG that if I could afford, I'd buy that. I'm going to go ahead and show you a little semi-secret thing here. It's not really that hard to find, but there's a data terminal back here, and I'm going to go ahead and try to hack this. Now that I have some blank floppy disks, I can try to hack this type of terminal. It's a little bit different. The way it works is similar in the background. And if you succeed, and it looks like I did this time, you get data. I got 1 data disk of Vartech data. And I also got 600 credits from Vartech. So Vartech is like one of these fictional, robotically owned companies. I don't even know if they're corporations or what is going on, but I haven't thought about it enough. But there's 6 different robo companies or whatever you want to call it that you can get data from. Bolts Incorporated, Credbank, Datatech, Mr. Ramen, Robotech, and Vartech. And I've already thought a little bit about what each of those companies is kind of like. Like Vartech is like some sort of military related weapons manufacturer or something like that. I don't know. Robotech, actually I don't know what Robotech does, but they're more like the generic robotic company. You got Mr. Ramen. There's gonna be ramen dispensers, and they'll be Mr. Ramen brand. Datatech, I don't know. They got the best data, I guess. And then Credbank, which is really obvious. It's some kind of bank. And Bolts Incorporated, which there's probably gonna be nuts and bolts dispensers at some point. Nuts and bolts already exist in the game. They're one of the materials you need to repair dispensers with. Now, since I went back to town, the alert level was reset. So I'm not gonna, like, the number of enemies I face is gonna be back to kind of the baseline. But if you stay outside of town for too long, your alert level will get so high that you may have trouble making it back alive. So that's the main hook with the game, is like, how far do you want to push it? How far do you want to explore and stay away from town before it becomes too dangerous to do so? And one of the first things you want to buy is probably the pocket alert meter, so that you can know what the alert level currently is, so you have an idea of how dangerous it's gotten. This is another map here. This one has a rather uninteresting name, but I called it Red Dust City. It's a rather large map. Got a lot of half-broken buildings and some still intact buildings. Okay, so now I'm going to talk about the engine I'm using, because it's a really obscure engine that virtually nobody has heard of, and you're going to be wondering why would you use such a limited, obscure engine made by one person? Well, it's, I guess, more than one now technically, but I just fell in love with this game engine. It's called the Easy FPS Editor. The version I'm using now is a forked version by a new developer called Easy FPS Editor Clark Edition. The acronym is EFPSECE. It's called Clark Edition because the original developer got kind of burnt out on working on this engine and decided to hand the reins over to a new developer. And the new developer decided that they would make a forked version for their version. So you can still get the original one, which is on version 1.6, I believe. And this new version by Clark is at version 1.10.5. Right now I'm using 1.10.4. I just haven't updated yet. So what is this engine, right? What is this? This is a weird engine. The Easy FPS Editor was created so that people would have a very easy way to create an FPS that's kind of like Wolfenstein or Doom. The world is built from grid blocks, so it's not a, you know, you don't use the same kind of map editing as you would for like a Doom map. If you don't use any of the scripting options, it gives you all the basic tools you need for putting together a basic retro FPS. But if you start to dabble in the scripting engine like I've done, well, I can't call it dabbling anymore. I've written about 10,000 lines of script now, which is kind of insane. Once you start to use the scripting options, it greatly expands what you can do with this engine. It's still a limited scripting language. It's not like it uses Lua or any other established scripting language. It has its own language that has just a limited number of commands. Although the new developer Clark has added quite a few command options so that we can do new cool stuff. A lot of the stuff in this actually would not have been possible without those new features. I'm going to see if I can make it back to town now, because I think the alert level is getting kind of high. Yeah, see, now these groups are getting a little bigger because the alert level got a little bit higher, because I've been away from town a bit longer than before. The enemies don't always spawn in the same places at the same time every time, though. There's predetermined locations where the groups could spawn, but whether they spawn there or not, it depends on, you know, the random numbers that are rolled in the scripts and stuff. So you never quite know exactly where the enemy is going to be, or even if there's going to be an enemy there at all. This is to increase the replayability and all that. So I mentioned that the Easy FPS Editor is very obscure. Hardly anyone uses it. It had a lot of bugs actually back in the day. A lot of those were fixed before I started using it, so I had a fairly pleasant time learning it and working with it. I kind of fell in love with it and just scoured the manual and tried the scripting stuff and got real deep into it. I don't know for sure, but I think this game may be more in-depth as far as scripting than any other FPS game that's ever been made, which there's not a lot of FPS games. One cool thing about this game engine is that it is completely and totally free. The old version used to be free for non-commercial use, and you could pay a measly $10 to get the version that was allowed for commercial use. And then the original developer decided eventually just to make it completely free all across the board. You don't have to pay anything. And then the new developer is continuing that tradition. So this game engine is completely and totally free. It's completely free. It's completely royalty free. Even if you get rich or something, nobody's ever gotten rich on this game engine, but even if you somehow get rich on this engine, or making a game that you sell from this engine, you still don't have to pay anything. Of course, if that happens, I'm going to throw Clark and the original developer some money, because I mean that would be really crazy if I didn't do that. Ooh, yeah, I can afford this now. Oh, look at that. I've already got over 10,000 credits. So I want there to be fairly quick progression. So as you can see, I've already made enough money to start buying stuff, which is really cool. The progression might actually be a little too fast currently, but it works. Oh yeah, I'm buying the shotgun now. This thing's pretty good. You know, you got to make the shotgun good, right? You can't mess around with a crappy shotgun in a retro FPS. So you'll see here in a second. This thing's pretty good, especially when I get it upgraded. Although actually I want to use this now because I upgraded the attack rate, the fire rate on it. Alright, I'm going to try to do another data hack here so we can get some more data disks. So as you can probably see by some of the stuff that some of the visual design here. Ooh, I succeeded. I got 4 disks from Bolts Incorporated. You may be able to tell already, but this game has, I think, a fairly unique visual identity, and the equipment and stuff. I didn't intend initially to do this, but it kept happening, so I've been leaning into it. The visual design of the items on these shop items is kind of a retro 80s feel. And of course there's floppy disks. I mean, come on, that's retro. But not like retro 50s feel like you would get with a Fallout game. It's a little bit different. Oh, here we go. Oh, it's just accuracy. Yeah, I'll go ahead and buy that too. Can I afford it? Yeah, okay. Okay, so now I've upgraded my assault rifle here. It shoots faster. Or does it? Did I buy it? Shit, now I don't remember. I thought I did, but it doesn't seem any faster. I can't remember. I definitely bought the shotgun upgrade for better accuracy with this baby. So some of the downsides of this engine is that there are some quirks about it. There are some weird things. Has almost no proper debugging features. The scripting language is a little weird, and like you have to be careful about your variable names. For instance, you can never have the full name of a variable at the beginning of another variable name, or the engine will get confused and won't realize it's two different variables. Also, like I mentioned before, I think there's no way to export to consoles with this engine. There's no Steam API support. It is rather limited, and I know there's going to be so many people that just are baffled by why I wouldn't just use Unity or Unreal or Godot or something like that makes sense. Like, here's a little secret about game dev. A lot of you are not going to believe me, but the game engine you choose is actually probably one of the least important things. I know, it doesn't make any sense. What are you talking about? It's like the most important thing. No, it's actually not. And the reason I say that is because you can make an amazing game in a crappy engine, and you can make a really crappy game in an amazing engine. Obviously, some things would be easier for me if I just went with a more established engine. But, oh, here we go. Now we got the attack rate. Alright, I think it didn't update until I went to the next map. Yeah, you can see here. This baby's got a faster attack rate now. Sweet. So yeah, there would be advantages to being using a different game engine. But what I really think people should try to understand is that the best game engine you can use to make your indie game is the engine that you're most comfortable with. Try out a bunch of engines, and they all use different methods, and they're made by different people with different ideas. And some engines that are supposed to be really good engines might be super confusing for you and frustrating. You may not like it. So try a bunch of engines and find one that feels comfortable, intuitive to you, that you actually enjoy using. That's the one you should use to make your game. Now, obviously, it also depends on whether you're making a 2D game or a 3D game. You can't just pick any engine and make a good 3D game. So there is consideration there. But once you've decided whether you're going 2D or 3D, try a bunch of engines. And even if an engine seems goofy and limited, or just like, I don't know, nobody else recommends this engine, why should I use it? Well, if it allows you to develop your game quickly and smoothly, and that's the engine to use. And that's what's happening with this engine. When I use this engine, I just feel like I can make rapid progress. The simple grid-based map editor that's inside the editor is very easy to use for me. It's pretty easy for me to visualize what the map's going to be. The game it allows you to create your new build very, very quickly, so you can playtest your game almost instantly after you've built some levels and stuff. That's very important to me, because I'm the type of developer who wants to playtest, 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 playtest. As soon as I write a new script, I playtest it. As soon as I make a new level, I playtest it. Even if I haven't added something new, and I'm just like starting my day, and I got my coffee, and I'm thinking, alright, what should I try to tackle today? I'll just pull up the latest build and just playtest it. This gets me in the mood, it makes me think about what I want to add. Sometimes I find a bug I can fix, and it gives me a feel of how the current balance is in the game. I love it, and this engine allows me to do extremely rapid prototyping and testing. Also, the core engine features, like the way that it handles player movement, the weaponry, the enemies, it fits almost exactly the feel that I wanted to do anyway. The retro game feel that I wanted to achieve. And the original developer for this engine and the newest developer, they both have created an engine that feels feels good and has like a lot of small polish. Like there's so many small things that are polished about the gameplay of it. So that, you know, if I make a new enemy and I set the parameters for the enemy and I pop it in the level and I start testing, you know, it just has a good feel to it before I've even done much, because of the defaults and the way the behavior of the enemies are and things like that. They have very, very simple AI, but it gets the job done. Some folks might ask, well, why don't you make your own engine, you know? Well, that's actually a good question, because I do know programming. I really enjoy programming. I've actually been doing it as a hobby for about 3 decades or something. A long time. So, you know, I could actually try to code an engine, but I absolutely do not like have the work ethic. I'm too lazy. Is what I'm saying. My motivation would plummet. Okay, if I had to create a renderer and like the freaking UI for the menus and the core movement and collision, that stuff's boring to me. I don't want to do that. That's all done, you know, when you have an engine like with pretty much any good engine, you got all that core stuff is done for you. So you can just kind of focus on making content. Let's see, did I have that for? Yeah, I already have it. Yeah. So yeah, I probably could maybe write an engine, but it's gonna take me like 5 years to achieve something smooth, playable on modern systems that does what I need it to do. That's just no. I'll never finish a game. Never. Oh, I need to get my rads down. See if I can find some vodka or first aid to buy. So if you've ever used something like RPG Maker, you know, you'll know that like it's nice to have all the core features already programmed and ready to go for you, and you can just add on top of that. Ooh, I can buy the power wrench now. Ooh, and I can get the faster firing rate on the shotgun. Yes, please. And that's you know, this engine obviously is nothing like RPG Maker, right? But when I use it, I get sort of a similar feel from it. Like it excites me because it's fast. It is really fast to throw a level together, and it's not fast, you know, to create the art. I mean, that's what actually I've spent probably more than half the time on art, and it still needs work. As you can see, these enemies, they don't have walk animations yet because I haven't gotten around to it. They just slide around. Look at that, he just slides toward me. Yeah, that's not how it's gonna be. I just haven't made the animation for him walking yet because I haven't felt like it. But there's enough work as it is to freaking make your own game by yourself. So yeah, I wanted to use an engine that had all the basics that I wanted, and then I could add on top of that. And I didn't realize how crazy I was gonna go with all the scripting. I've written ridiculous amount of scripts. There's dynamic things that can happen. I mean, there's I was gonna say a weather system, but it's not a weather system. There are rust storms that can occur, and they can occur on any outdoor map, and the chance is very low. But it could at any moment now. A rust storm could begin. You might get to see one on this devlog. If not, I'm sure you'll see one on one of the later devlogs that I do. Alright, this video is already getting kind of long, so now I'm going to try to wrap it up with the last part, my game dev process, and how it's maybe a little bit different. And while I'm doing that, I'm going to try to get past Red Dust City, maybe, because there's even more regions. Oh, there's a data market update. The value of Mr. Ramen data has increased to 700 per disk. So every time you load into a map, well, almost every map, I think, there's a random event that could happen there where it could potentially increase the value, or in some cases decrease the value of one or more of the different types of data. So that's what happened there. The value of Mr. Ramen data increased. The idea there is that it's like kind of like a very simplified stock market. I mean, it's not really a stock market at all. You can't buy the data and sell the data. There's no stock exchange or none of that. But what I mean is that the data has a fluctuating value for each of these companies. And so when you hack a terminal and get some data for a particular company, you could look at the current value of it if you can find a data merchant, and then say, well, it's kind of low right now. I'm going to just hang on to this data until it's more valuable, and wait for the data value to rise for that particular data, or that particular robo company. So I've got the Bolts, the most data I've got right now is for Bolts Incorporated. I can try to make it to the data merchant, see what it's worth, and then it probably won't be worth that much right now, so I'll probably hang on to it and wait for the price to go up. There is a limit that it'll only go so high, and occasionally there can even be a data market crash where like the value of all types of data suddenly drops, but it's not very common. So if you hold on to it for too long, it might bite you in the ass because you might not be able to. You might have a crash, and then like the value of it might plummet. It's just more dynamic stuff, more replayability and unpredictability. That stuff is fun and interesting to me. So my game dev process is a little different than most people. And I say that because you typically don't worry about all the art and the finer details and the bug fixing and the polishing until later in the process. You don't usually do it this early in the process. But for some reason, for me personally, and this is true for pretty much any creative project I've ever worked on, I can't seem to resist the urge to polish and edit and tweak it from the very beginning. Now you can get lost in that, of course, and never accomplish anything because you're constantly changing things and not really going forward. But when I put something into this game, I can't stand the feeling of it if it's half broken, So I get it working. I keep working at it until I've got that particular feature working. Oh, here we go. I need some first aid to get my rads down. Oh, I could have just bought the vodka. That's a cheaper method. Oh well. Yeah, it bugs me if I've got a feature in the game and it's really not finished. So I tend to just keep working at it until, oh, here we go. I can break some of these with the wrench to show you that feature. Okay, none of those dropped anything. The barrels are not, they're not going to contain a lot of loot. But with any creative project I've ever done, like I like to edit it as I go, and that's really not a good idea. I mean, that's what everybody says, and yeah, I understand why it's not a good idea. You could waste a lot of work. And with video games in particular, you almost never stick to your game design document exactly. There's always something that's different. Maybe a lot of things that are different. By the time you get to building the game and you realize what the game really feels like or is or whatever, it evolves. It changes from what the original design was going to be. You may have a core design that you stick with, but a lot of the little details are going to change. So that's why people don't normally do all this polishing and bug fixing and stuff early on, because you might spend all this time polishing up a particular game feature only to realize later on that the feature has to be completely dropped or redone or something else. So it's generally not a good idea to do it this way, but I just enjoy it this way and I can't stop myself from doing it. And there are advantages to doing it this way, because this means that at any given moment I can have a working build, pretty much. Like, I almost never go to bed at night with with a build that technically doesn't work. That's not normal at all. Some games have been developed that way in the past. I believe maybe the first Doom was developed like that, where they were playtesting it so often and they had working builds through most of the development. Maybe I might be wrong, but I think they did, that kind of thing where at any given time the game would be, whatever was in the game would be mostly working. So that's what I'm trying to do. This will allow me to release demos early in the process. So the first game demo, oh god, okay, the alert level got kind of high while I was away from town. Look at all these robots. There's another town nearby though. I can take refuge at here in a second. Oh, ran out of ammo. There we go. Oh, another advantage of an engine like this is that I can have tons of enemies and it's almost never gonna lag. Like, I could have like 50 enemies on the screen and like there's almost no chance for lag. My computer is like a crappy computer. It's not very good. But it runs this game engine at a solid 60 FPS most of the time. And I'm gonna lean into that too, if you let the alert level get high enough, I mean, you can just face just waves of enemies like you're kind of seeing right now. That's fun to me. That's interesting to me. That's exciting. I do need more enemy variety, though. That's definitely something that'll be coming in the future. Right now, there's just the same 3 enemies, mostly the basic robot. So in developing this way, there are probably going to be times where I regret it, where I think, oh my god, I spent so much time polishing that one thing, and now I'm going to have to drop it. But what I'm trying to do is to make sure, before I add something to the game, or I start on something for the game, that I'm pretty sure it fits the core design that I'm going for. I mean, that's not always going to happen, but like, I really think long and hard about what I'm putting in and what I start working on. And, you know, and also I'm trying to put the effort into the things that really matter for the most part. Like the gameplay, the core gameplay itself. That's the first thing. I actually I did a lot of texture work before I really started this prototype. So I had a lot of, I was doing a lot of thinking and brainstorming about what I wanted to make and how I wanted to make it. And, what it would kind of look like. And I was already working on a lot of textures because I had another project that I was doing that I ended up dropping so that I could work on something more exciting, which is this. But once I actually started making the prototype, I only made one level in one town, and I didn't add another level for a long time. And it's because I needed to get the spawning system working. I needed to get the randomized loot system working. I needed to get the shops working. I needed to fine-tune the gameplay, the weapons and enemies. And so I spent quite a long time working on all of that underlying gameplay stuff for the first 2 areas before I even considered making the 3rd area. And once I got sick of playtesting those 2 areas, I started making the 3rd one. So I got the core gameplay working in a very limited space, and then started to expand that space. Oh, here we go. This is the Pocket Alert Meter. This thing is awesome. Now at the bottom left, I have an alert meter. It will tell me, what the current alert level is. It's back down to 1 because this is considered a town or a safe zone, whatever. So it dropped back down. So when I go back outside there, I'm not going to be facing those large groups of enemies again unless I hang out there for a while. Mods. Oh, here this is a cybernetic upgrades shop. There's power legs. Gives you speed, a little bit of armor. The alert jammer. This is kind of cool. This thing, it attempts to lower the alert level every time you enter a map. It doesn't always succeed, but it attempts to do that. So if you don't want to face, big groups of enemies, and maybe you're trying to travel far from town, and so you need to keep the alert level as low as you can for as long as you can, then an alert jammer would be great, a great upgrade. Oh, cool. This is the data shop. This is where I can find the current data value. You can see now that at the bottom right, there's a data value menu alongside my secret data menu. And I can see that Bolt's Incorporated data is only worth 100 credits per disk. That's the lowest it can go. Vartech is also only worth 100. And the reason that those are low is because those are the 2 companies that I've hacked. When you successfully hack a company, it lowers their value, right? And so then I'm going to hold on to that data and maybe not hack that company. You can't select which company you're hacking, but I'll try not to do data hacks for a while, maybe after I've built up some data, and then hope let the value build back up. Alright, so I think that's enough for this first devlog. I've shown you most of the areas in the game. You haven't seen all of the area, just parts of each of these areas. You can kind of see how the game plays a little bit at this current point. And like I say, because I'm building this in a way where I have a working build ready at almost any moment, I should be in a good position to release a public demo pretty soon. I don't know exactly when. I can't really say exactly when, but I really want to do it as soon as possible, because I really want to get more people playtesting this and see what people think about it, see how the difficulty levels are, and if they're if they need to be tweaked. I'm sure some of the difficulty levels are maybe a little bit too hard or too easy. So I can't wait for people to play this and for more people to play this. I've got a very limited closed alpha group right now. cannot wait to get more people to play this, see what they think of the style of it and the feel of it. And I know it's sort of silly. I know it needs a lot more detail. The environments are kind of sparse. Some people are going to hate the graphics, but I hope that people will be able to find some enjoyment with it. And it's the kind of game that I want to play, and I'm making that kind of game because that's the only way I'm going to stay motivated to actually finish this game, is if it's the kind of game that I want to play without getting too crazy with the scope. You know, I've got to keep the scope limited to a degree. You know, scope creep can really kill a project when you're a solo dev. So I'm going to try to make the world as large as I can and as dynamic as I can, but I also got to be careful not to expand the scope too much. So thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this little devlog, or this long devlog. I don't know exactly when the next one will come, but once I have some more stuff to talk about in the show, I'll be launching the next devlog, and hope you enjoy it. Take care.